Okay, we are moving on to 2-6, solving proportions today. So I can write and solve proportions. We are still working on the same standards that we were working on, AREI 3 and ACED 1. So a proportion is a statement that two ratios are equal. Remember, ratios are fractions. So the words here. The cross product of a proportion are equal. And then when we're looking at the symbols, we have, look, it says A times D. Remember, when they're next to each other, that means multiplication, equals B times C. So this is, a lot of people say, well, we can cross multiply and they'll be equal, and that's true. So here we have 8 times 21, which is 168, equals 6 times 28, which is 168. So 168 equals 168. So that will be true for all proportions. So solve the proportion, if necessary, round to the nearest hundred. So we're going to do this two ways. So I am going to do this as I would any equation, which means I want to isolate the variable or get the variable by itself, and I'm going to do it by doing opposite operation. So that's divided by 45, so that means I'm going to multiply by 45. And I'm going to multiply both sides by 45. So when I do that, 45 over 45 is 1, which leaves me with 1x. And then I go 45 times 15, which is 675, and that's all over 25. So 675 divided by 25 is 27. So x equals 27. Now, if I were to, we're going to erase this, so make sure you pause that and get it down. The other way I can do this is cross multiply and divide here. So I'm going to multiply across and divide by what's left. So I have 45 times 15 is 675 divided by 25, which is 27. So exact same answer. So I'm going to do this by doing cross multiplication here. And I will set them equal to each other. So just like we had. So I'm going to take 5, and if I'm multiplying it by the whole quantity, 8 minus x, then I have to put that in parentheses. Equals 2 times 13, which is 26. So now I'm going to just go through my steps of solving. So I distribute. So I have 40 minus 5x equals 26. I'm going to get my variable by itself, so I'm going to subtract 40 from both sides. And that goes away. And that equals a negative 14. Oops. What happened? Sorry. So I have negative 5x. Remember, the negative sign that's in front of the 5x stays with it. So I'm going to divide by negative 5. Divide by negative 5. And that's just, we're just going to leave that as 14/5 equals x. Remember, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Oh, it said round to the nearest hundred, so we can go ahead and divide that and see what we get. So we get 14 divided by 5, and it is 2.8, so x equals 2.8. Hundredth spot is actually this next spot, so we'll just leave it the way it is. So same thing here, I'm going to take it and I'm going to multiply across. So I'm going to have 9 times the quantity 2x minus 3, and then equals 24x. So I'm going to have to distribute. So I have 18x minus 27 equals 24x. And then I actually need to get the variables on one side and the numbers on the other. So I am going to subtract 18x so I can get the variable over here. So I have negative 27 is what's left. I bring that down, equals, and that is 6x. So now I'm going to divide by 6, and that leaves me with negative 27 over 6 equals x. Now if I go ahead and divide that in my calculator, it says round to the nearest tenth, that gives me x equals negative 4.5. Remember the 10th spot is right here, and we are already there, so we just leave it as it is. Okay, so same thing, it's just going to be, we're getting increasingly harder. So I'm going to have 4 times the quantity 4x plus 3, and then 9 times the quantity 2x minus 5. So 16x plus 12 equals 18x minus 45. Now I have to move the numbers and the variables to one side. So I'm going to just move the 16x. When I do that, that goes away. That gives me 2x. Bring everything else down. Then I'm going to add 45. Add 45. And that gives me 57 equals 2x. Then I divide by 2. And x equals 57 over 2. Or I can go ahead and divide that out. And x equals 28.5. So, over the last few years, about 12% of the coins produced by the U.S. Mint have been quarters. If the mint to make coins at the same rate, which proportion can be used to find the number of billions of quarters that will be produced in 2020 if the mint produces 25 billion? So this is a percent, which means we're always going to put the part over the whole, okay? So we have to decide if this 25 billion is the part or the whole. It says a total, so it's a whole. So 25 is going to go on the bottom. Quarters will go on the top, Q. And then 12%. So percent is always a proportion, and it's always just over 100. So now we cross multiply. So that gives me 100 Q equals 12 times 25, which is 300. Divide by 100. Divide by 100, and Q, that looks terrible, sorry. Let's try that again. Q equals 3. Now we have to remember to put billion because that's important. 3 billion. Okay, homework. Watch the video and take notes. Complete the WSQ by either filling out the Google form or recording it on the Flipgrid, letting me know what you learned.